Is it on?
Test, test.
I was going to hit the gavel, but there really isn't a lot of reason. Thank you very much for the all of a sudden calming down and getting ready. I apologize that we're about 5 minutes late, but we will start our business, and the first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, good evening. President Close is unable to attend the meeting, so I have the opportunity to fill in. It can't be a very easy job to fill in for her, but I will attempt to do so tonight, and we will see her back in 2 weeks. Next item is report on actions in closed session. There were no actions taken in closed session. However, we do have the one readmit matter, which is item 15-16027 that requires a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Director Pugh, seconded by Director Anderson, and we get a roll call vote, please.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Abstain.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
And so for clarification, Mr. Christoph had another engagement and missed the first few minutes of the meeting, so wasn't there in the closed session. Otherwise, he would normally have voted. Next item, do we have any statements of abstention for any members of the board on any item in tonight's agenda? Seeing none. Any adjustments to the agenda from any member of the board? None. Any board member requests for information? Going to be an easy night, thank you. We'll move to item C7, which is approval of the minutes for the board meeting that was held on September 13th, 2017. Can I either have a motion or any requests for any changes?
I move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Director Anderson, seconded by Director Pugh. Roll call vote, please.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Aye. Motion carries. We'll move to item C8, and if I could have the blue cards on that, I'd appreciate it. This is the public hearing for by-trustee area election system pre-map. We will now convene a hearing to receive public testimony concerning the composition of potential trustee voting areas associated with the district's transition to a by-trustee area election system. Pursuant to California Elections Code Section 10010, the board is required to hold 2 public hearings to seek community input before preparing the present and presenting draft maps of the proposed boundaries to the district. As part of this public hearing, members of the public may submit comments on the establishment of voting area boundaries that will be established as part of the district's transition from an at-large election system to a by-trustee area election system. Speakers will be given 3 minutes to make comments on this matter, and this matter only. We'll have a public comment section next, and we will also have public that is able to comment on individual items that are on the agenda when they come up. We have received cards from 3 people who wish to address us on this subject to the hearing. If, as they are coming up and speaking, you are interested, there are blue cards up at the top. If you would fill it out and bring it down, we can add you in. First person is Dwayne DeWitt, followed by Gregory Farrow.
Thank you, sir. I'm up here. I'm going to come down there.
That's fine. And you know where the button is to move the item up a little bit so you can, or the microphone up so you can address us.
Thank you, sir. My name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland, and I'm glad you folks are looking into this matter. I personally know some folks from Roseland who solicited the Southwest project to get this going. And you may say, well, that's bothersome. But actually, I think this is going to turn out to be one of the best things for the city of Santa Rosa, at least in my short time here, all my life. All right? I went to Roseland School, Cook Junior High School, which was in Santa Rosa City School District, Santa Rosa High School, and then Santa Rosa Junior College. So you could say I got some investment in this whole situation. What I'd really like to see you do is actually take the time to prepare that the fact Roseland may be annexed into the city also by the end of this year. And if that occurs, you'll have a city of close to 190,000 people. And it's time to look at the whole pie. I was also the proponent of district elections in the city of Santa Rosa 21 years ago. And at that time, we were looking at 6 type of pie-shaped wedges, if you will, and 1 popularly elected mayor. And I will make that ballot initiative available to you so you can see what we were thinking at that time. But with you folks having your approach, and I don't want to disrupt it, I actually want to improve it in any way, shape, or form that I can with community engagement, and ask you to reach out to places like the Roseland School District and ask them to get absorbed in to the Santa Rosa Unified School District. And we could save monies down the road instead of having this duplication of services and highly paid superintendents and people like that. So I'm really pleased that you folks are giving me this opportunity to speak with you also, because you're going to be the ones, in a sense, who are the pioneers. And as if any of you ever read any of that history they teach over at Santa Rosa High, those are the folks with the arrows in their backs sometimes. And you got to just roll with the punches on this one, and not take this kind of naysaying that they're going to say like, oh, hey, you know, it's not going to be good for business or whatever. I see Miss Kitamura is quite concerned about the 3-minute clock not running right now, and she's concerned that I won't finish. Don't worry, ma'am. I know all about time-limited democracy, and I'll be out of here in no time. With that in mind, though, I want to make the best use possible of this time and tell all those young people behind me that they should stay and listen to this, because it's their future, and they'll be the ones voting on the districts in the future, and you ought to give that student board member a vote also. On that note, I'll be going. Thank you.
Greg Fearon, followed by Michael Vonderpoort.
Good evening. I'm Gregory Farron. Tonight, I'm sort of representing Santa Rosa Together, as I did last week, and I wanted the audience to know that we've prepared a short video, which is on our blog, santarosatogether.blogspot.com, which tried to lay out the how of this process as we understood it from what your consultant presented to us, basically taking census tracts, creating the same kinds of stuff. It's a how to do it, and it's intended to strengthen your efforts to try to engage everybody. As you know, Santa Rosa Together is all about civic engagement. We aren't here to tell you how to draw the districts. We're not here to try to, figure out how many or where. That's the city's process. That's your consultant recommended that the school districts, the school zones, the enrollment areas be included in that process. We think that's a good idea. But more than anything else, we want you and the audience to know that the idea of trying to work with the city in doing this process, because as most of the people in the audience probably know, the city of Santa Rosa is doing the same thing the school district is doing. So we would like at least some idea, some attention, some thought given to, from the community's point of view, having some degree of overlapping, some degree of thought given to where the lines are. We can imagine if there's absolutely no thought given to it and you all reach different ideas about what communities of interest are and where these lines ought to be, that we have lots of neighborhoods that are sort of torn apart between their school district boundaries and their city district boundaries. We think there might be some advantages to having some overlap, and we'd just like some discussion about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Michael Vonderpoort.
How do I use this up? What do I need to do to get this up? There we go. Does it work? So, does it work? That work? You get that to work? I got a which? Which way button do I push? On the left. On the left. So here? There. Let's give that a try. All right, we'll give that a try. I'm Mike von der Porten, live here in Santa Rosa. I've been involved in city schools over the period of time. I want to talk about the process of separating out the different districts that are being proposed and bring to your attention a very important issue, and that is the elementary districts. And I think it's very important that we recognize these are some really, pull it down, some really round numbers. You guys will have your experts come up with very precise numbers, but basically every new district representative needs to represent about 30,000 residents in the high school district and about 10,000 in the elementary district. And it's key that each district does not have a smaller number of elementary students. And just for example, it should have something about like this, where each of the board members is representing about the same number of residents in both the elementary and the high school districts. This is key in order to have a fair representation and fair handling of elementary issues. It would be quite easy to come up with boundaries that look something like this. And if you look at this, we would have board members 6 and 7 who'd be very interested in elementary issues, and we'd have 4 members who'd have basically no interest in elementary issues, and 1 who'd have kind of sort of interest in elementary. And we'd actually have a situation with board members who have no interest in elementary district issues, and we'd have a situation of taxation without representation. We'd have board making decisions where board members 3 and 4 would have every incentive to try to transfer funds, reallocate costs to the elementary district, because they don't care about the elementary district. So it's key that we have this be appropriately handled. So our elementary districts deserve to have full representation on the board, a fair focus on elementary issues, and the full resources of the elementary district directed to elementary students. And I know it's always a tough one when you have more voters who are interested in the secondary district than the elementary district, but we need to make sure that that is maintained. For those who aren't familiar with it, the elementary district is this smaller central district. The secondary district is that much bigger district. And it would be very easy to come up with boundaries that are more like that bad example I gave you. Because it'd be very easy to look at the central core, which is the elementary district, say this is our inner city core, it's got more issues. That really should be represented by a couple of board members. And then have these people on the outside who don't have any interest in the in the elementary district at all. So we need to make sure we avoid that. And my last point is, please provide the raw data, give it to us in the smallest available increments, allow us to do our analysis, put together ideas, and help with that study and that analysis. Thank you.
Is there anybody else on the district from public? Okay, thank you all for your comments. The public hearing to receive public testimony concerning the composition of potential trustee voting areas is now closed. We will move to item C9, and that is a public comment on agenda items that are not on the agenda. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to speak to us on an item that is not on the agenda. By virtue of the fact that it is not on the agenda, we are not able to take any action nor have any discussion with respect to it. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes on those requests. And if you have an item that relates to a public employee, there is a complaint process, and we're not in a position to be able to hear those comments in a public setting prior to using the complaint procedure. I have 2 blue cards, Dwayne DeWitt and then John Cortopassi.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to use the overhead.
You know where the light is.
Yes, sir. I'm going to speak from right here. My name is Dwayne DeWitt, and I'm from Roseland. That's right over here in this part. When I was a kid, the city hadn't been divided yet. The 2 freeways hadn't run through here and made us essentially a 4-quadrant town with me on the wrong side of the tracks. But I like it over there. It's kind of nice. And I think that it's really important, as you folks have the opportunity to move forward on progressive issues, that you realize that Santa Rosa is one of the most heavily segregated school systems around when you actually look at it. And no one wants to say that, but I'm going to say it because essentially I walked into a game over at Shepherd School a while back, and it was like, wait a minute, this is just segregated. Proctor Terrace was on one side, all white, and Shepherd was on the other side, all Latino. And I'm thinking, that's wrong, because when I went to school, we were dealing with what was called Brown versus the state of Kansas, the whole school board thing, and we went through school integration. And so it's really important that as you're looking at these districts, you also take into account that there needs to be racial integration in Santa Rosa. Now, some people are going to say, oh, well, yeah, we already got it worked out. And it's like, no, you don't. Let's get real. Just right across the street over there, across the freeway, you got serious segregation, all right? And you can be at the forefront of changing that with those districts that you're going to draw up. I looked at the nice flyer that you folks have about everybody serving on here, and you're all highly educated, really good people, and I'm glad for that. Much better than some of the electeds on other bodies and boards, if you will. So you get to be the leaders, and it's time for you to actually wave that flag of true integration in the Santa Rosa Unified School Districts and all the little districts out here like Bellevue and Wright and then Roseland and Kiwanis. Those folks are also part of the problem. And they're not going to want to necessarily hear from me, the old Rube from Roseland, coming in saying, hey, how are we going to get it better? But they'll listen to you, I believe. So I'm hoping that you'll make some statements on social equity and that you'll basically say, hey, we're moving forward into the 21st century. I thought we'd have been here before and it had already been taken care of, but it didn't work out that way. School was more integrated when I was young. You just got to look at it and say, okay, I was dancing to the Temptations. Do you guys know who they are? You should. Everybody in here should know who the Temptations are, so go Google it up and figure out what's happening with Motown, and then you'll understand Santa Rosa even better. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dwayne. John Cortopassi.
Good evening, John Cortopassi. I came to this meeting tonight with no intention of speaking. I thought some issues had been resolved. They obviously have not been. I've addressed this board multiple times throughout the years. I've sat up there for 10 years watching every school board meeting. I keep reminding you, actions speak louder than words. I used to think it was your actions didn't match your words because you didn't understand. After these last few weeks, I firmly believe that it's because you just don't care. We have a tentative agreement in front of us right now that I'm here to tell you there's a whole group of teachers who are going to vote no on it. The last time teachers organized to vote no on a tentative agreement was over the health care issue. To me, this agreement is just as bad for our union, just as bad for our employees as that agreement was. We have put together flyers. We have gone to, at this point, at least a dozen of the schools and done discussions. And we've done that because much of this tentative agreement has been based on promises, on what we're going to do, not what's written in that agreement. 2 weeks ago, my union president reached out and asked this board for a letter of support, acknowledging that health care and wages were an issue. It was met with less than lukewarm response. My union president put an email out letting us all know that he had been told he was going to have that letter before the end of school and it was going to be emailed to all of us. I was at school till 5 o'clock. I found out that letter is not coming. The tentative agreement is built on trust. The relationship we have with this board and the district office is built on trust. Trust is built on actions. I'm sorry to say it, I have no trust in this school board because repeatedly your actions have let the teachers and the employees of this district down. Thank you.
All right, we'll move to reports. Item D1, Santa Rosa Teachers Association.
Good evening, Superintendent Kitamura, School Board, and community. I'm William Lyon. I'm the president of Santa Rosa Teachers Association. I want to give the board a negotiations update. I want to let you know about what SRTA leadership is doing to explain the tentative agreement to our members and hopefully convince them that voting yes is the best way for us to move forward. I want to start by giving you a story of a bargaining success that we've had this week. Anna Bitton-Williams, are you in the room? Too bad. For those of you guys that don't know, most people do, but Anna is a very well-respected teacher in Santa Rosa. She works for the Santa Rosa Accelerated Charter School. She has plenty of good things to share about what's going on well at her site. She's agreed to do some trainings throughout the year for our teachers. There was really nothing to oppose about the training, except that it hadn't been negotiated with SRTA. Through Anna's leadership, working with Tara Lyon, our elementary rep on the exec board, and Catherine Howell, our chief negotiator, SRTA was able to sit down with SRCS officials and formally agree to her training. The process was both pleasant and educational for all who participated. I hope that this is a beginning of a new normal. I've handed you a document that they're direct quotes from the EERA. The ERA is the Educational Employment Relations Act. It's a California act. It was written in 1976. The reason I'm sharing it with you is it's come to my attention that we would benefit from defining our terms about what is and what is not negotiable. According to the EERA, according to the rules in the EERA, Santa Rosa Teachers Association is the exclusive representative for our members in terms of bargaining. That means that only SRTA can officially negotiate with the district. Individual teachers can't do it, groups of teachers can't do it. Even if a whole school site wanted to do something, it would have to go through SRTA, or it would be violating the EERA, the Educational Employment Relations Act. There are 3 mandatory subjects of bargaining. They're not optional, they're mandatory, and that is hours, wages, and working conditions. Those are the 3 things that have to be bargained. That means that any work outside of the contract day, including training and committee work after school on the weekends or in the summertime, must be negotiated with SRTA. We have an extended day rate that's in the contract. It's agreed to. It's currently $43.08 an hour, and that's not under the question. And while it is often used for training, it has only been negotiated to be used for summer school. For all the other uses, it has to be agreed to. So even if we were to pre-agree on the pay, which I think it would benefit us to add more definitions of what is allowed besides summer school. Even if we did that, we would still need to negotiate hours and working conditions of trainings outside the contract day. How long, how many trainings, who can come, what will they do there, what are their responsibilities they have before and after the agreement. All of that is subject to negotiation. And I mention that because over the last couple weeks, I've heard SRTA be criticized for not attending the 59 trainings that were offered for Illuminate Ed over the summer. They were paid, after all. Well, SRTA doesn't oppose the members being trained. On the contrary, we want them to be trained. We do oppose these trainings, which fall under the mandatory subjects of bargaining, having been put forth without bargaining and in direct opposition to our demand to bargain them. And that's where our line is in terms of what needs to be bargained. It doesn't have to be nasty, it doesn't have to be protracted, but SRTA will insist on its rights under the law to bargain. I recognize that at this point, there are a lot of trainings that need to be bargained. SRTA's goal is to work with our exec board and our bargaining team and with district officials to put systems into place to make this as easy and as rewarding as possible. We think we can do it in a way that satisfies our rights under the law and that isn't unnecessarily cumbersome or Byzantine, and that ultimately, and this I think is the most important part, will produce better outcomes for our members in our district and our schools. So we're not trying to oppose just to oppose. We're not trying to oppose to be nasty. We do think that ultimately we're going to make better decisions if we work together. Along these lines, SRTA and SRS has had some other successes this week. I might need to call them interim successes. We haven't got signatures on it, but you may remember that our members are not in love with the June 4 Professional Development Day that's in the tentative agreement. As per that tentative agreement, within 30 days of full ratification of the agreement, SRCS and SRTA are to bargain the operational issues regarding this day. I'm glad to report that we've already gotten started. This week, Catherine Howe, again, our chief negotiator, myself, along with Jason Lee, Diane Kitamura, Anna Guzman, Rick Edson, and others, got together and we started the work of drafting a framework for that bargaining. Our goal is to finalize that framework into an agreement to share with our member, hopefully by Tuesday of next week, so that teachers who need training can get that training in time for an upcoming report cards. And it felt good to be working towards a common goal. It felt like real collaboration. It felt like what I hope becomes the new normal. I want to give you an update on what we're doing to help educate our members on the tentative agreement, hopefully get them to vote for it. We have determined that October 6th through the 12th will be our vote to ratify the agreement. SRTA at this point has visited all but 3 of our 25 sites to explain how the deal came to be and why we want our members to vote yes. Our goal is to finish these site visits before the vote begins on October 6th, so everyone will have a chance to ask questions. We are encouraging our members to vote yes for the following reasons. This is the best financial offer that the district can afford at this time under these circumstances. Because of the 3 professional development days at the per diem rate and the medical benefits increase and the salary increase, the difference in take-home pay for members for this year, for 2017-18, depending on where they are on the salary schedule and whether or not they participate in the district-sponsored Kaiser plan, the difference in take-home pay is between 2 or 3% higher if we accept this agreement versus turning the agreement down and having the last best final offer imposed. For our most economically challenged members, that 2 to 3% is a big deal. This TA is a big win for our designated hour employees who will be incorporated into the normal pay scale. An injury to one is an injury to all, and this is a way for us to stand up and support one of our most marginalized subgroups. The agreement to negotiate class size and caseloads for our special education teachers, psychologists, speech and language pathologists, behavioralists, nurses, and other special educators is an interim win. Our goal is to use that as a first step to negotiate meaningful limits in class sizes and caseloads so that we can offer a better education to our special education students and other students with special needs. Lastly, and this is the one that seems the most relevant, they're all relevant. This one, I guess maybe it touches my heart, but turning down the deal means that many of the things that have been sort of twisting in the wind while we wait for this to resolve, things like negotiating trainings and committee and just normal labor management problem solving, are being pushed back until we have a ratified agreement. A no vote pushes these things back even further. A yes vote pushes things up the to-do list so that we can address them sooner. Lastly, I have to say that I was pretty disappointed to learn today that the school board is unable to give SRTA a written statement that recognizes that medical benefits are a critical problem and that must be addressed, that there isn't enough money to do it all at once, and that the board is committed to working with SRTA and the district office to solve this and other problems going forward. I am told that while the board does support us and does want to work with us, the board was advised by legal counsel that a formal statement could set the district up for an unfair labor practice in the future. I understand, and that's too bad. Our members would like to hear it from the board directly that you want to work with us. I truly hope that this doesn't negatively impact the outcome of the ratification vote. That would be a shame. If there's anything else that the board can do to demonstrate that you're committed to working with SRTA going forward before the vote begins on October 6th, I would personally appreciate it, and I think it would help us ratify the tentative agreement. I can say that SRTA leadership will absolutely work in good faith with the school board and the district office to solve our problems going forward. There are just too many problems to solve, problems that are solvable, and for us to solve them in a combative way. SRTA remains committed to being professional, collaborative, and caring. Our goal is to work together in ways that solve problems by building relationships and systems that allow us to solve the problems while honoring our rights under the law. Our students, our schools, and our community will benefit from this collaboration. And once we establish these relationships and systems, we will all be glad that we did. Thank you very much for listening.
Tammy here is our CSEA report. Okay, we'll go to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everybody. Will and I met today for over 2 hours, our second meeting as superintendent and president of SRTA. We will continue to have those meetings to look at systems, overarching policies and relationship building activities, working together to develop ideas about how we bridge this gap that is currently in our district. Listening to Will speak about many of the things that have happened over the last couple of weeks solidifies in me the commitment that in order for the district to move forward, what he's saying is true. We have to do it together. And I can tell you that the Board of Education is right there. So I will let them speak for themselves, but I would tell you I would not be able to do the work that I'm doing without their support. Some really interesting learning for me today in my meeting with Will. One of the most significant things that seems so simple is that SRTA and SRCS have not sat down to define common terms. It's the things that I think we sometimes disagree about. What does it mean to you to negotiate or consult? What does it mean to the district? We have to come together and have a common definition of these things, or we will continue to be in this gap of understanding, of building relationships. Our team, the cabinet team, thinking very hard about what was talked about last week in terms of the June 4th PD Day. I loved the fact that the SRT executive team went back and worked on a document. The cabinet team went back and worked on a document. And yesterday, or was it yesterday, came together, and when you put them up on the board, they were not that dissimilar. What I shared with Will is that doing a scan of the district, I saw how many teachers, of course, did attendance, because that's an easy one, but I wasn't sure about grades and grade book. And let me tell you, I am so proud of our staff, of our teachers, of our support staff, of our administrators, for the number of people who are using the Illuminate gradebook. It was just phenomenal. That then provided me insight to the fact that, you know what, we need to open up our PD. We are now at the point, and I shared this with Will, and I wasn't sure if I was going to share it tonight, but I'm going to. This is my 5th year, and in beginning this journey of the LCAP and Common Core standards, we had a lot of stuff thrown at us at one time. What we knew is that we had to build capacity. And yes, we did use consultants and we used outside people to do that. But now, the capacity has been built with our staff. Look at CCD, look at Barrier Writing Project, look at what's going on in math. I mean, NGSS Science, you look at all of VAPA. I mean, the number of things that are going now with our internal staff, our teachers leading that professional development. It's time to change the way we're doing professional development. You are the experts, and we want you to be teaching peer-to-peer. So I am going to stop there and switch over I just wanted to say that and let you know that we are very aware of it, and I am extremely appreciative of the work we're doing together with the executive team for SRTA, as well as CSEA. And we do want to continue that work, and it will be demonstrated by our actions. So I want to switch gears a little bit, and the first thing I want to do is to let you know that we did a ribbon cutting today for the culinary food truck. So thanks to Director Debbie Bettini and a grant from the CTE incentive grant funding, we were able to work together with our culinary departments at Carrillo High School and at Pioneer to have a fully decked out culinary truck that the students can use at various caterings that they do for their classes. In addition to this, a $10,000 oven, special oven for this, was donated by Rationale Oven Company. So I think that is a fabulous demonstration of partnership with community. So I specifically want to thank Mary Schiller from Rio Carrillo. It was her brainstorm and idea that really got this going. Maureen McCabe and Ron DeLillo at Pioneer High School's culinary program for their work in making this dream come true. I also want to thank Kelly Cook, who is in our purchasing department. She had to do a lot of searching around in order to be able to find the builder of this truck and to have it look this way. This CDE tells us this is the first culinary truck for a culinary department in California. So we're the first district, the first high schools to have this. So I think that's awesome. I said at the top, but I'll thank her again, Debbie Bettini. Without her leadership and work on this, the truck would not have come to fruition. And finally, I want to thank the Board of Education for their support of our CTE programs, continually to understand the importance of real-world learning, such as this program here. And then the last thing I want to show is a little update on the Carrillo football field with a little time-lapsed video for you to view. So we will do this for Pioneer as well when they get going, which should be shortly. But here is Carrillo's time-lapse video. So this is 4 weeks, 5 weeks. This is 5 weeks. So this is week 2. Rick, you did put the helicopter.
It's not a helicopter, it's a drone, right?
Yeah. Okay, this is week 3. Week 4. and week 5.
Nothing's green.
And that concludes my report.
Obviously, there are more weeks to come on that. I'm going to take the board president's report since Jen is not available. And first, some of you may have noticed when Mr. Cortopassi was speaking that I was talking to the superintendent because I'm trying to understand our right and our legal abilities because Will is right. Despite the fact that I have not heard from a single board member that they didn't think that Will's idea was a good idea, apparently if we were to do anything like that, it would be seen as impacting negotiations. If we were to send an email out on the district email, that would be viewed as trying to impact the employee's right to discuss and vote on a contract without any influence or involvement of the district or the board. And I don't do school law, so I can't tell you whether that's right or wrong. I get the concept, but I would suggest that anybody who believes that that is an evidence of the value structure of the board, I would tell you that that's incorrect. And the only thing I can point to in that regard that I know I can't get myself in trouble about because I have said it a bunch of times before, and so I'm probably okay saying it again. There isn't anybody on this board who doesn't agree with Frank and I 15 years ago when we said that the health care benefits going on schedule was a bad idea. Frank and I were the only ones that were here at that time. We both vigorously opposed that. Not a good idea. Don't do it. The union leadership at that time came to us and said that the majority of their union wanted it. We actually didn't believe it. Said, fine, show us a vote. The vote came in, and I think I'm going to be reasonably close to it. It came in somewhere between 75 and 80% supportive. You don't think so, Matt?
Like 68%.
I'm sorry?
Two-thirds.
Two-thirds, okay. I don't remember, as I said, I appreciate it. I don't remember the specific number. But the number was clearly more than a majority, and it was the union saying this is what we want, and we're a little hard pressed to say, well, no, your members voted for it, and we're actually more or smarter than you are, and so we're going to tell you don't do it. We lobbied against that, and neither Frank or I have changed our mind, and I can tell you without violating closed session that there is no current member of the board that disagrees with us in that regard. That I have heard. And so that is only a personal knowledge base based on discussions with board members outside of closed session. So I get away from any, I believe I get away from any issue in that regard. That is action speaking louder than words. And it's 15 years worth of belief and value. I appreciate the superintendent's comments. I appreciate that Will and she and the president meet with regularity. We all want the same thing, which is good education for students, employees that are adequately compensated and get reasonable benefits. We are all in a position where the state of California grossly underfunds education in comparison to almost any other state in the union. And they have forced upon us an increase in retirement benefits, both on the employees and on the district, and have done nothing relative to corresponding increases in income or money coming into the district to assist with that. We got a lot of work to do in that regard. We're well served by having 2 members that serve on statewide and national school board association who carry that message on a regular basis, and we will continue to fight that. That is, in the end, our problem, And it isn't a problem in this district. It is a problem in every single district throughout the state of California. It is an issue that we as citizenry in the state of California ought to be telling our legislature in no uncertain terms, and the proposition that we passed a number of years ago didn't do what we thought it was going to do. And I don't believe that I've ever heard any board member tell me otherwise in that regard either. So that is a window into certainly my brain, but not anything that I haven't said before or isn't on the record or isn't accurate with respect to what happened, pick the number, I don't remember, 15 years ago, whatever the date was, that very unfortunate decision with respect to health care benefits was made. We'll move now to board member reports. I'll start on the left, and Director Sheffield.
All right, not much to report. I just do want to report out that last week I attended a immigration DACA town hall that was hosted by Congressman Mike Thompson and Jared Huffman with the State Assembly member Jim Wood. And Santa Rosa City Schools was recognized for our established schools as safe havens, something very significant, something for us to be proud of. And also just to know how fortunate we are to live in a community that supports our unprotected. And it was an amazing town hall. It was gathered at Santa Rosa Junior College, students from the JC, but also students at our schools were there, parents were there, a lot of folks in the community. So something that I just want to share with the board, that we were acknowledged and our efforts. So
Thank you. Dr. Anderson.
thank you.
I, being in the neighborhood, happened by the Hidden Valley Pasta Queue on Friday, and as I have for many, many years, enjoyed the time with my neighbors and all the people in the school, and it really made me think about how important those types of events are for building community. I remember when Patty McCaffrey was principal there, and you felt like you were at her dinner party because she made such a point of going around and meeting every family that was there. And it made a really great impression on us as families, and I continue to think that sort of event is critical for our school communities.
Dr. Pugh.
This last week, I attended the high school counselors conference at the junior college. It was well attended by our faculty counselors, and much was learned. Thank you.
Dr. Fong? Thank you. Director Crystal?
Yes, I had the pleasure of visiting Santa Rosa High School. I'm normally out the gate a little faster during the beginning of the school year. I've been a little immobile, but I was able to walk up the ramps there and talk to some very nice people on faculty. And I do hear a lot of concerns out there, and I do take them seriously. I had a chance to visit a classroom where one of the most exciting topics I can remember in history was the National Bank was being presented. And I had a chance to talk with Principal Coscarelli for a bit, and then meet and greet some other folks during that afternoon visit as well. It was very much a pleasure. I did have an ulterior reason for going there. I was thinking out, in terms of the Santa Rosa High School colors, the orange and black. They just seemed so old-fashioned and out of date to me, and I kept presenting that concept to people, but I just got no buy-in at all, so I guess it's still going to remain orange and black. So, but anyway, it was nice visiting the school. Thank you.
I was just going to say, Director Christoph, that if you ever do that, you have to give a new paint job to the former principal. Otherwise, his car won't make any sense. So, all right. Luke, do you have a report? Thank you.
So I have some different activities from the different high schools. We put out a message. We wanted to hear what was going on at the different high schools that they wanted to be presented to the board. So here are the different things going on from the student body. We got LC Allen's homecoming game this Friday, September 29th. The Lobos are going to be playing the Prospectors from Pioneer High. Then On Saturday, September 30th, Carrillo is having a goodwill drive to support drama and stagecraft. If you have any items of clothing that you aren't using, bring them to the MCHS parking lot between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Saturday, so that's a great way to both donate clothes to the Goodwill if maybe you have a bag lying around the house, and then also give back to a school in the district. Montgomery High's Mecca Club is collecting donations to help aid in the recovery of recent earthquakes in Mexico. Really good cause that needs a lot of support right now. And at Pioneer High, all ninth graders will be trained on Suicide Prevention Week. The CAPE team will present a program called QPR, which stands for Question, Persuade, and Refer, to teach students suicide warning signs and behaviors and how to respond appropriately to get that person help. For a second. Now we're going to go to Santa Rosa High, where Art Quest students are getting ready for their 24th annual Fall Showcase on October 5th. The showcase begins at 6:30 in the auditorium. Admission is free and everyone is welcome. So that's a great way to come support the arts in our district, something that's really important to me, and I'm sure many members of the board as well. The online college application and financial aid window is open October 1st, so seniors should check in with the college and career readiness counselor at their site for more information and support. That's really important. The FAFSA form to apply for financial aid, a lot of people who think that they would have no eligibility find out that they do, in fact, apply for some form of financial aid. So that's really important. October 1st is when that opens. And the culinary mobile kitchen that we saw is now available. I think that's really awesome. That's such a cool idea that the culinary students are going to be able to come cater different events for the community. That's a really forward-thinking idea, and it makes me proud to be in the district that we're the first in California to have such a food truck. So that's my report for the student activities going on in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Any CSBA item?
Yeah, just a couple things, Bill. The CSBA is, California School Boards Association, is trying to promote more communication and learning through getting together, so to speak, and they call it a road show. We are in Region 3. And the concept is, I can honestly tell you, I think I learn more when I go to a conference by sitting down and talking to somebody that's, from another district or another state in some cases. And, we get kind of insular in our jobs, and there's a lot to do, and it's very understandable. But this is a way to get to know people in Solano and Alameda counties and other counties, for example. And the date has been postponed. This is going to be a regional powwow called the Road Show, and I'm very much looking forward to it and like the idea. However, the date announced is November 6th. That's a Monday in the evening, and I just don't see our board, as busy as people are, being able to do this. So I'm going to try and see if we can find a date that makes more sense for folks. So, driving to Solano County and, in the dark and back in the dark late is not really exciting. But anyway, the concept is good. Hopefully we'll be able to work this out, and we'll have a chance to meet some new people and share some ideas. I also am very pleased to report that Mike Wallace has, our president-elect for CSBA, has appointed me to his legislative committee for next year. So I will be doing what Mr. Carl said. I'm already honing my message and picking out certain people that I'm definitely going to visit during this time. But again, I'm looking very forward to working in this capacity with CSBA on behalf of our local school districts. Thank you.
Thank you. NSBA. Excuse me. Yes, that's great.
Yes. Well, not so much about NSBA tonight, but I did want to bring to the attention of the board that the Sonoma County Office of Education will be having a candidates forum for the State Superintendent of Public Instruction. And what would be really interesting is to see the compare and contrast between the two candidates that will be coming. Marshall Tuck is a for-profit CEO of charter schools and ran and nearly won in the last election against Tom Torlakson. And also we'll have Tony Thurman, who is a state assembly member, also running. So I would encourage the board to write it down November the 14th from 10 to 12 at the Sonoma County Office of Education. That's November 14th from 10 to 12. There'll be a debate and there'll be participation from the group. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to consent items. Need a motion on E1s through 12.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Christoph, seconded by Director Pugh. Roll call vote, please.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Student Board Member?
Aye.
Move to our F items. Thank you. First is an action item for approval of a resolution recognizing September 2017 as Attendance Awareness Month. Superintendent?
Vice President Carl, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Steve Mazzara, who will be presenting this resolution.
Vice President Carl, Board Member, Superintendent Kitamura. We're requesting a recognition of a State Attendance Month as September. It kicks off a very important campaign that we've held for a number of years. Later on in our presentation, item F7, we'll have more information about our project sale and an update from Director Turner. But it represents a big shift for us from focusing only on truancies to talk about chronic absenteeism, and we'll have much more about that in the presentation. Recommend approval.
Any questions or comments or a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Christoph, seconded by Director Pugh on item F1, resolution recognizing September 17th as an Attendance Awareness Month. Roll call vote, please.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Item F2, this is approval of a resolution recognizing October 2017 as Filipino American History Month. Superintendent Kitamura.
Yes, I am very pleased to bring this resolution before you. Filipino Americans have contributed greatly to the culture and history of not only California, but actually all over the United States. Some of the first settlers, even as I was looking at the history, much earlier than many other of our immigrants. I just wanted to point out a few notable Filipino Americans. One is Faye Del Mundo, the first Asian American female to attend Harvard Medical University in 1943. Another couple of gentlemen who were instrumental with Cesar Chavez in the UFW grape worker strikes was Larry Italiong and Philip Vera. And then a contemporary famous Filipino American is Cristeta Comerford, who was the executive chef in the White House. It gives me great pleasure to present this resolution to the Board of Education.
Board member questions or comments or a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Pugh, seconded by Director Christoph for the resolution recognizing October 2017 as Filipino American History Month. Roll call vote, please.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Very good, thank you. We're moving from months down to weeks. This is an approval of a resolution and item F3 for recognizing October 8th through 13th, 2017 as Week of the School Administrator. And in your packet, you received a list of all of the names of the folks that are in our district that are affected by this resolution. Superintendent Kitamura.
Thank you, Vice President Carl. I will turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Jason Lee to present this resolution.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Kitamura and Vice President Carl on the board. I'm proud to present this resolution. I've been a member of the administrative team at Santa Rosa City Schools for many years, and I think the thing that makes me the most proud is the administrative charge we had at SCO, a two-day event, where for the first time in my experience, we had some very deep-level thinking and collaboration between administrators at all levels and discussions around equity and the things we need to do to improve this district and move it forward for long term. And so I left those 2 days excited to be a continued member of this team, and I feel like the people we've hired recently have been the right people, and they're really going to help us do the work that we need to do to move forward. So with that, I present this resolution to the board for approval. Thank you.
Board member questions or comments or a motion? Yes, Dr. Christoph.
Thanks, Jason, for doing the presentation. Thank you, Diane, for doing this last year. I know we recognized in different ways all the administrators, and to be honest with you, I'm glad they're not here, just because I know how busy they are. But when I do visit schools and I do go through the district, I'm always struck by how hard working these, our administrators are, and what a tough job it really is. And it's become even more difficult over the last few years. So I support this wholeheartedly, and just want to make sure that it's not just a vote for a resolution. It is really something that's heartfelt, and I know the other board members feel the same as well. Thank you. And I'll go ahead, Dan.
Superintendent.
Thank you, Director Christoph. We've actually, administrators don't listen. We have developed a card, a personal card from us and the board as well, the cabinet and the board, that we will be presenting to all the administrators in recognition of our appreciation of them.
Any comments or a motion?
I move this forward.
I second.
Motion by Director Fong, seconded by Director Sheffield to approve the resolution recognizing from October 8th to October 13th, 2017 as Week of the School Administrator. Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Student Board Member?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We'll move to item F4. This is an action item as well. It's approval of a resolution to protect and support Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA, so-called Dreamers, program participants. Superintendent Kitamura.
Vice President Carl, members of the board, it actually saddens me that I have to bring this resolution forward. But I think it is an important one to take a stand, as we have with safe haven districts and many of the initiatives that we have done with regards to equity in our district. So although it saddens me, I stand firm in presenting this resolution for your approval so that we can support our students. As you can see by the agenda item, there are 6,000 families in Sonoma County, 4,000 of them who are K-12 students. In addition to K-12 students, we also have many employees who fall under DACA as well. So with that, I would ask that the board support our sending this resolution, this approved resolution, to the members of the legislature you see within the resolution, and that we again take a stand about protecting our students and families.
Are there questions or comments or a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Pugh, seconded by Director Christoph. Approval of the resolution to protect and support DACA. Roll call vote, please.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Student Board Member?
Aye.
That couldn't be clearer. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. We'll move to item F5. Our next three are discussion items, the first being on the Equity Initiative update.
Vice President Carl, board members, Superintendent Kitamura. I'm in collaboration with CNI, Dr. Guzman and her team. I'm assisting in the presentation here for our equity update. I will be presenting to you Ms. Elizabeth Evans, coordinator in the CNI department, who will go through this and we'll work on this together. Ms. Evans.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board and Superintendent Kitamura. I'm thrilled to be here tonight to give you an update on our equity initiative. The information I'm going to be providing you is about the actions that we have taken in school year 2016-17. Some of the data that I'm going to provide, though, is a little bit older. It's from school year 14-15 and 15-16 because that's what's available through the CDE. I'm not sure what I just did. There we go. Is there any way to make it so that it doesn't happen? Let's keep going. Okay. So we started our equity initiative in school year 2014-15, and at that time, we really were looking at students who weren't the most successful as being underperforming. And over time, we really realized that those students are actually underserved. And very often, those students don't have the opportunities that can help them access their education. And it's not, it's just that some of the students, just because of things in their families, problems in their living situations, they can't access the learning opportunities in the ways that other people can. And this cartoon really illustrates that point. Families may face a variety of issues. There could be healthcare issues, there could be language issues. Students may be poverty-stricken. They could have all kinds of problems that prevent them from accessing learning opportunities. So what can we do to support students so that they can negotiate some of these obstacles? Because not every student has a real clear course ahead of them. So this slide is going to share some data with you. And like I said, the data that we have is from school year 14-15 and 15-16. The top 4 metric areas that are sort of in that blue-gray color, those are areas that are more, it's more positive information because it has to do with AP tests and A through G and that sort of thing. The last 2 topics, suspension rates and dropout rates, those are not such positive subject areas. But the point is, if you look all the way over onto the right, and I'm sorry that it's a little bit out of whack there. All those things should really line up. But if you look at on the right-hand side, those are the gaps that exist between white students and Hispanic students. And the reason I looked at those 2 subgroups was because those are our largest subgroups. It doesn't mean that there's not disproportionality in our other subgroups. There definitely is. But these are our 2 biggest groups, so that's why I focused on them. So when we're thinking about if you think about the measured areas, the things that we're measuring under the UC-CSU, that refers to, obviously, the A through G courses, that if a student completes the A through G course requirements, then that student is eligible to apply for a UC or a CSU. In our district, 19.5% of our students completed those A through G requirements. So that percentage of our Hispanic students can apply for attendance to a UC or a CSU. While with our white students, it's 36.4%. That's quite a large gap, 16.9%. With AP tests administered, and those are AP tests that students have actually taken, 30.2% of our Hispanic students have actually taken those AP tests, while our white students have taken 43.8% of our white students have taken those tests. When it comes to the AP scores, and 3 or above, you have to have a score of 3 or above in order to receive credit for taking the AP class. 1,027 of our students took the AP test and passed with a score of 3 or higher. And only 16.8% of our Hispanic or Latino students made that level of score. So there's quite a discrepancy between the white students, what the white students are able to do, and what the Hispanic students are doing. And this in no way, I am not in any way saying that it's the Hispanic students' fault for this data. I'm saying that there's something more that we need to do in order to enable our students to do better in these different areas, whether they're having access to A through G courses or being able to take AP classes, etc. And then if you look at graduation rates, and again, it's a little askew there, but the graduation rates for 2015 were 85.5%, and only 80.9, that's almost 81% of our Hispanic students graduated. So almost 10% more of our white students graduated. So that's a gap that is it's important that we look at that gap. When you look at the next two, the suspensions and the dropout rates, I really see those two as, rather than opportunity gaps, I see those two things as engagement gaps. Because if students are getting suspended or they're dropping out, they're not in school, we don't have the opportunity to engage them. We can't help them access their education. So for suspensions, that's a pretty big gap. Our Hispanic students are suspended 59% more. They're 59% of our Hispanic students are suspended, while only 24.2% of our white students are. The gap is 34.8%. And then with the dropout rate, 10.7% of our students are drop out, and that, again, that was in 2015, the spring of 2015, and 15% of our Hispanic or Latino students are dropping out. That's a pretty serious percentage. That was supposed to, well, okay, anyway. This was supposed to kind of roll out this really neat way, but it didn't do that. So anyway, these are the ways.
This is a PDF, so it's not your regular PowerPoint.
That's, okay,
so,
thank
yeah, just roll.
Okay, thank you. I was like, wait a minute. So these are the ways that we're supporting the initiatives in our LCAP, and these relate to what we did in 2016-17. So under training and PD, we have our Museum of Tolerance trips, we have unconscious bias, and we also have our Michael Fullen work, which is the coherence work that we've been doing between our administrators and teachers and staff, so that's something that we've been collaborating on together. For behavioral and academic support, we have our multi-tiered support systems, we have our soul counselors, and Best Plus. For our community work, we have been building our ELAC meeting participation, really increasing the attendance of our ELAC families. And also, we are really making a point of including our parents and our communities through our various stakeholder meetings and through our surveys. In restorative, our restorative specialists are at every one of our schools, very important. And then with resources being equitably distributed, the LCAP and the SIPSAs, the Single Plan for Student Achievement, require us to reallocate resources so that all of our students have access to all the learning opportunities, and that we provide that extra bit of support that those students that may have those obstacles, like you saw on that course, they may have the alligator in the swimming pool, and they may have the wire fence, barbed wire fence they have to get over. That our goal is to help students negotiate some of those barriers. So this slide shows the various things that our actions that we've done this year, and like I said in the last slide, our Museum of Tolerance work is continuing. Our unconscious bias work is a collaboration between our associations, that's SRTA and CSEA, and the California Teachers Association. And that provides a free professional development opportunity for our staff members. We attended the National Equity Project, a team of us, in the last spring, and took a workshop in leading for equity in complex systems. It was very interesting and helpful because we are a complex system. In June, we worked with the publishing company Corwin to put on the International Cultural Proficiency Institute here in Sonoma County. It's the first time that that institute has been held in Northern California. And we had over 50 of our staff members who attended that conference, and several of our people from our community also presented. Down at the corner on the right, the little red box refers to the ethnic studies legislation that occurred earlier, and we have a team of people that are meeting. They met all last year. They're meeting again this year to look at what ethnic studies might look like in our district. That was supposed to roll out in 1819 for the state. All high schools were supposed to have an ethnic studies program, but that date has been pushed forward. It's now 2021. I think they're really trying to figure out what that's going to look like. So our group of people is working together to see what might work best in our district. Again, there's our coherence work with Michael Fullen. At the top right, our English Learner Master Plan is something that was developed this year with a team of people that worked really hard to put together the best possible program for our English learners. We have the Accelerated Learner Plan and Services, ALPS, that is also going to support those advanced learners. And then the last piece on this slide there in the center is our lovely Golden Bell Award that we got last December for our equity initiative, and that was for school climate. On this list, we have all these great things, and I know you can read them. I don't want to read them to you because you can read them, but I do want to point out that kind of down at the bottom, the next to the last one, it talks about our equity consultants, Stephanie Graham-Rivas and Kekansa Nuri Robbins, and Stephanie is here. Hey, yay. And Stephanie and Kekansa have done a fantastic job in supporting our work. Stephanie goes with us to the Museum of Tolerance and helps deliver some of the curriculum, helps us look at data, because you know how important it is for us to understand data, especially when we're thinking about what we need to do to support these students. Now we have the video that Mr. Mazzara is going to. This is from the Cultural Proficiency Institute, and these are people talking about what equity means to them in our district.
The opportunity to co-host the Cultural Proficiency Institute has been tremendous.
In order to
Santa
make that
Rosa
happen.
City Schools has been working on equity and social justice now for 4 years. We are doing this in conjunction with the LCAP. The ability to be able to attend this conference and be a part of this conference has really helped validate the work that we're doing. It has helped energize and motivate staff, all staff. We've had principals, teachers, classified staff here in attendance at the conference.
Part of my philosophy is getting to know students' stories, getting to know where they come from, getting to know what's going on in their lives.
We have students in our district who are being passed over, who are, allowing themselves to shut down rather than being pulled out and drawn into their education. And I think that by knowing these kinds of stories, that's really going to help us to get to them, to be able to reach those students.
What doors do we close to our students without realizing it, and how can we open those doors so every student has the same opportunities?
When you take the step to attend a conference like this, you are making yourself vulnerable enough to the point where you can change the way that you think and change the way that you teach.
In one of my sessions, a student gave a speech. It was the most powerful speech, and it was entitled Teach Me. And she was talking about just teach me. Don't dumb down the education. Don't have these ideas of who I look like or what I may be. Just teach me. And she was teaching me.
We have now met people who are doing this same work in other places, and that we can build a network of best practices, a community of practice around the work of equity. What I intended was that Cultural Proficiency Institute would be a training that they would learn. And they did. Our staff did learn. The part I didn't know or didn't realize they would take away was, again, the validation of the work that we're doing. We don't do the work because we want to be on the forefront. We do this work because it's right for kids.
So our next steps. We're going to continue to work with our site administrators to include equity outcomes in their SIPSs, and we're going to continue to work with Michael Fullen to collaborate on learning more about how to lead from the middle. We're going to refine our LCAP goals and continue to review outcomes. We're working with some teaching tolerance and some social justice curriculum, and we plan on embedding that curriculum into previously developed lessons and units. We hope to implement the EL Master Plan and the Advanced Learner Program and Services Plan, and we'll also continue to reach out to our community and engage them in our work. Now, unfortunately, this was a beautiful slideshow here at the end that showed all these fabulous students that we have. And so I will just tell you, they were really cool, and you'll have to take my word for it. But what I was going to say, while you were seeing these wonderful children doing all kinds of cool things, all grade levels, that these are our students. They're part of who we are. And the purpose of education is to build our human capital. When we do a good job of educating our students, we add to the capacity of our community. All of our students deserve our best that we can provide for them. And like Superintendent Kitamura said, we're not doing this work in order to be at the forefront. We're doing this work because this is what's best for students. Thank you.
Before we turn it over to board members for questions, I just want to make a quick note that what you're also beginning to witness is, in that presentation, is the next degree of data mining that we're doing. We are, in all the reports, you'll see them later in reports that we do from all our offices, that we're asking that next level of questions, not just how are we doing at the surface level, but breaking it down by our demographic groups and asking those difficult questions. And as you turn that light on in our district, we will have some difficult conversations, and we may not have all the perfect answers because those are difficult things that schools struggle with. But I think under Superintendent Kitamura's leadership, we are asking questions that very few districts are asking, certainly Sonoma County. There are some leadership districts in the state, and those are difficult questions, and we appreciate that leadership. We appreciate the board in allowing us to go there and those opportunities that will come from it. And with that, we'll take some questions, if any.
Great, thank you. First, I have one blue card, Gabriel Albavera.
Test.
Microphone. It's on.
Greetings. Gabriel Albavera from the Ridgeway High School. But I'm not here as principal, I'm here as a parent. Last week, there was a passionate young man talking about why he's not bringing his students to this district. And it really captivated me because I'm a parent as well, and I felt that passion. This is why I chose to bring my students to this district. My children had been at Windsor, and I decided to bring my daughter to Montgomery, and now my youngest daughter is at Slater. And to be able to see the differences in their faces, to be able to see that they've become student leaders at their sites. My youngest is 8th grade secretary, and my oldest is a student government at Montgomery. And to be able to talk to them about equity, and when I talk to them and they say, I ask them, what does the demographics look like, Oh, Papa, we got everything. African American, we got Asians, Filipinos, it's all part of student government. And in a way, this is what we're talking about, being able to have the representation of the school be represented in student leadership, in sports, always across the board. And so for me, these were the reasons why, as a parent, I felt that this move was not only beneficial for my family, but for my students as they go older and they go into college as well as the work world. If we look what's going on in the world today, I mean, things that's happening with the NFL, we're talking about equity, we're talking about the rights of individuals, people of color, people like myself. I want to make sure that my kids are left in a better position than I was in high school. And I appreciate the work that we do with Stephanie, incredible. It's not easy. It's not easy to look into yourself and say, what are my biases? We all have biases. I do. I absolutely do. If we say we don't, then that's where the bigger problem lies. And so this work, going back to what Mr. Becerra is talking about, asking the real questions, and questions that are going to dig into us as administrators, teachers, faculty across the board. So I appreciate the work that you guys do. This wasn't easy for you guys to pass. Continue this work. I support it as a parent. And I'm on the clock at some point in time because my 23-year-old is pregnant right now. And there's a possibility that little Luca might be a Santa Rosa City School student, and I want them to continue with this work as well. So thank you again.
Thank you. Board member questions or comments? Director Christoph.
Thank you for the report. I'm going to say that the data from 2015, I'm just going, we've been doing this effort and so on. For me, data is very important. I'll reinforce that, and I think other board members have said this as well. We need more updated data. We need to look at it different ways as well. And just a couple of questions. On the AP, Elizabeth, when you mentioned people only get credit if they get a 3 on an AP exam, what were you referring to?
So students don't get to use that credit in college unless they've gotten a 3, 4, or 5 on an AP exam.
Okay, well, the counselors that I've talked to and the students that I've taught in the past, those numbers, I think we need to be very careful with them because I think it gives a wrong impression to parents if they think their kid got a 3, they're going to get credit. Depends on the college they go to. Cal doesn't even get credit for a 5 now.
Oh, wow.
And they used to give credit, if you got a 5, you could go to poli-sci 2, which you didn't get any credit for poli-sci 1. So anyway, what I mean, those numbers on an AP exam mean a lot of different things, and they're changing all the time. And then my one question is a practical question. Let's say that we have 50 kids and 20 of them are Latino, and let's say the average is 3.5 for the Latinos, the average for the non-Latino population was, let's say, 4. So there's a difference. How do we change that? What do we do to make that different?
So that the Latino students do a better job on the test? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, and to be honest with you, most of the kids that I taught didn't take the test because they didn't need it. They didn't need the credit for college. They just wanted the GPA. They'd be very honest with you and so on. But let's say in an ideal world, these are all good kids, all capable kids that want to take the test. And you just have a discrepancy like that. Let's say, maybe even a whole point. Let's say one's 3 and one's a 4, and so what do you do? I mean, is the goal to make them all 4s, or to bring the Latino population up to a 4?
Well, I think I'll just
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I think that the goal really and the point of that data was to show that our Latino students don't have the same kind of opportunities that our white students have. And I think one way that we are trying to support our students is we're looking at how we are approaching learning and engagement in all kinds of ways. Do you want to say anything about that?
I would say that there are so many factors in the actual AP exam. One of the first things I would say is it is culturally biased. So that could be the reason between a 3 and a 4. I don't want us to get caught up in the numbers. We did put it in here just as a gauge. I want us to get caught up in the gap. So the other side of that is I also don't want Latino students to be taking AP courses just to take them. So I do want that expectation of something, whatever it is we deem that to be, whether it be take the exam with 3, 4, 5. I don't see that it's about a student who gets a 3 or a 4 or a 5, although we put it in there like that. It is a students having access to the AP course and being successful. Now, the successful part is another thing you might be alluding to, and that is what supports need to happen for a student who has not had the opportunity to have other honors or advanced courses, and then going into an AP course.
So do we promote students taking AP exams that are culturally biased if they're a minority? In other words, should we do that, or should we just make statements, say we'll have our own tests or something? I don't know.
Well,
that's a good question.
The numbers are not looking good, and it's a culturally biased test, then I'm wondering what we're doing, is what I'm saying.
Well, the problem is they're all culturally biased tests. I mean, I don't care if it's my opinion only, but if it's the SAT or any of the standardized tests, I would say in my research that they all have some cultural bias. And I can remember myself taking standardized tests. I didn't understand the concept they were talking about because I had not been exposed to whatever it is that happened to be in the test. So.
Sure, Director Anderson.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Gabe, for making your comments. I appreciated that. And actually, I'm sorry that I didn't dig out my LCAP statistics from 5 years ago, because I'm thinking that some of these statistics might actually be showing a lot of improvement. And I'd love to see a trend line, because as I recall, just my memory, whether it's good or bad, that the dropout rate is actually looking better than it was 5 years ago. And that would be important to include in this report, I think.
Yes, when you go into the CDE and you get the data that's available, it is, I wanted to use consistent data across the whole graph, and it was 14, 15, and 15, 16 that was available.
Okay.
And that's...
Yeah, because I think we also should point out when things are improving.
Yes, I agree, and I think our graduation rate, we saw that was better as well, but there is still a gap that exists, and I think that's, like Superintendent Kitamura said, it's really about the gap that we need to focus on.
And I think that starts a lot earlier, so I think we need to be talking about, our elementary schools and our feeder schools and middle schools, because if you're waiting till you take the AP test, it's too late. So, thank you. Thanks for the...
You're welcome.
Thank you. Director Sheffield.
Thank you for this report, and I know that a lot will be addressed as we see more data come, as Assistant Superintendent Mazzara had pointed out. Looking at the measured gaps slide that was on here, and I'm just wondering, we listed the 2 largest populations, white Hispanic populations, and I'm wondering, across the board on the gap, does it correspond with the greater gaps between these 2 comparisons, or are there other racial...
You mean with the other minorities?
Right, and that's what I would like to see in future data, is to know where the largest gap is, because those are the students that are being passed over the most. And I know that it makes sense because of the makeup, the population of San Jose City schools, but if we're going to focus, we need to focus there, and it helps to see those numbers.
I agree with you absolutely. Even though we have a very small population of African American students, they are suspended at a much greater rate.
That's exactly what I'm getting at.
I think it's really
You're saying it,
important.
I'm not, but that's what I'm getting at.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I agree. I agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Fawn.
I'm very impressed with the report. Thank you for giving it all in a 10-minute report with some nice visuals and videos. So we're, as a district, are doing some really powerful things. And my new phrase that I've been using lately is like it takes many brush strokes to make a painting. So every little bit contributes to that. And if, you know, if people are saying, oh my gosh, we're doing so much, it's too much, it's kind of like we can't do enough. We cannot do enough, fast enough for these kids, because if we wait one more year, they're going to be in the next grade, and so on and so on. So I'm going to also just ask Diane, or actually make a comment about when we're looking at race, and I'm just looking at my own family in terms of like first generation, and we're looking at first, there's no, you know, delineation between first generation immigrants, second generation, big difference, right? And of course you can always, you could have also defined it through LCAP measures of poverty, which is a whole other thing, right, that we're all aware of. But I want to look at it, Diane, actually through barriers. And if we're talking, Evelyn, in terms of elementary school, I'm wondering, I'm looking at the kids, I'm actually spending a lot of time at some elementary schools right now. What happens during the summer? We have these fantastic summer camps, and they're 3 weeks, I believe. 3 weeks. So 3 weeks in a 10-week summer, and what do they do the rest of the time? And what learning is lost during the summer, and why that's a barrier to learning? And can we figure out as a district, how do we address that barrier to learning in addition to doing these kinds of things? What kinds of structures are going to help us do our job? Teachers are doing amazing things in their classrooms, and they're pulling their kids along in August, and you know, they're looking at the summer TV land or something, whatever they're looking at. And so teachers are getting, you know, unconscious bias, and they're participating in all these wonderful things. How can the structures of the day or whatever that they can't control that. How can we look at those things and better support kids? Another way to support kids.
So I have in my career always said that in order to make change in a system, you first have to look at mindset. So the work that we've been doing, the equity work, the restorative work, all of those things are wrapped around mindset. It is, and Elizabeth talked about leadership from the middle. What that means is whatever the middle is in the spectrum, and so for me, the middle would be probably principals. I'm the superintendent, I have the assistants, I'm the middle. The principal's middle is the teachers. And so in order, what we have seen and what I have known from my former work is that in order for us to change systems, it has to come from the inside out. So teachers, principals, sites have to see that this is important and that we want to make this change, and here's why. Staffing 3 weeks of summer school, which we think is important and does make a difference, is difficult because of staffing. Some teachers want summers off, and so it's a happy medium to have this is just an example, 3 weeks off to be able to rest and restore, but still provide 3 weeks of training or 3 weeks of summer school. Now, what I would say that I would challenge my staff to do is, what are other ways in which we could support and find summer type, or even not even summer, breaks, anytime there's a gap in school, what could we do to bring in some sort of intervention for kids? I think that's what you're talking about.
And you've heard me say this before, we're running schools on a 1920s model. So how does that model serve us and how does it not serve us?
And again, I would say that I agree with you. You and I have had these discussions about we're trying to operate complex, multidimensional systems back when it wasn't so complex. And so, as I said at the top in my superintendent's report, I cannot do this as an isolated person alone. This has to be something that our entire district sees as important, from the families to the students, to the teachers, to the administrative staff, to the board, to the community. We cannot do this alone. So I think what you're hearing is Director Fong wants to see transformation and change to support this work. I think what I'm hearing her say is she wants to see it in terms of systems. What systems can we change? What kind of activities can we do to support students in a way that we don't have the gaps? We're in the middle of that discovery. Here's what I know. It will not be top down.
It will be from the middle, and in order for it to be from the middle, we have to work on mindset. We have to work on education. We have to work on training. So I know you're anxious to do it, and I appreciate that. I don't know from the rest of the board, I do sometimes get blips of anxiousness about, we gotta change this, we need to have this, and we need to do that. Believe you me, I hear it, and I am tucking them in here and putting them into the cog to get to its turn to put it out there. But I have to tell you, and I think you know this, that it won't be top down, that it will be from the inside out, and that we will work together about whatever those changes will be. So.
Student board member.
Yeah, I really wanted to speak on this topic because seeing the 59% of Hispanic students are suspended at some point, that just really hurt me, honestly, to see that our second largest population of students, the majority of them is being told you cannot go to school. I mean, is it any wonder that the other statistics, the good statistics, the graduation rate and such also have a gap? I don't think it's any wonder. I think it's actually a little bit miraculous that those numbers aren't higher, given the fact that we have almost a 35% gap in suspension rate. And I just think this is part of a larger problem in our nation where minorities, young minorities who are committing an offense are seen as a threat, as seen as a danger, and then white students who commit similar offenses are seen as people just making a mistake. So I would say in our district, if we're going to help solve this problem, we have to, it's okay to say that we need a lot of suspensions or that we need not a lot of suspensions, but if you're going to have it one way or the other, it has to be the same. We can't have one standard for Hispanics and one standard for white students, and to me, this data reflects a policy that would be two different standards. So I really think we need to work on the suspension rate and the disciplinary policies in our schools.
And that actually is better than it was. We had really high rates. It's better, but the disproportionality still exists. But our unconscious bias workshops that we do, through our collaboration with SRTA and the California Teachers Association teach us a lot about recognizing our own biases, and I would encourage you all to attend. You can, if you would like the schedule, I can give it to you. We happen to have a level 1 next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, and you are welcome to be there. It's going to be at the district office. It's taught by a fantastic instructor from the Office of Civil Rights at CTA, and it's very meaningful and really helps you understand where our biases come from. We may not necessarily be mean people who don't like people that are different than us. There may be just things in our brains that just make us not see, recognize, or appreciate people that are different than we are. It's kind of a natural thing that we are afraid or repelled by or scared of people that are different than we are. And there's just some really great data that Gail Watts, the presenter, shares with the attendees. So I encourage all of you to attend one of those or go to the Museum of Tolerance with us. We're going to have 2 trips in the spring. So please contact me if you're interested.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. I appreciate the significant and real district focus on this. I think Steve's comment about turning the light on in the district, been on the board for a long period of time, and we haven't had courageous staff members who are willing to turn that light on. And perhaps it was because they didn't think the board would support it, but I think you found out that there's very clear support. And we appreciate the staff focus with that.
Thank you.
We are going to take a break until 5 minutes to 8 and then pick up our last 2 discussion items. Okay, we're getting back.
Thank you.
We're going to move to item F6, which is I'm sorry. You're just going to launch in. There was enough time there. They just like, let's go do it. Update on district and course enrollment. Assistant Superintendent Lee.
Yeah, thank you, Vice President Carl and Superintendent Kimura. So Stephen Mazzara is going to help me with this. And so this is our opportunity to kind of educate the board and bring some information to the board about where we are currently and where we look to go and the processes we hope to create to better serve our students when we look at staffing and enrollment. So the bullet points here really are kind of guide markers, if you will, that we use in the process. And so we look at enrollment projections, student requests, all of these things kind of come in a certain order. So enrollment projections, open enrollment, all of these things we use to kind of work our way through the process of both staffing and building master schedules with site administration as we move into halfway through the school year. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Mazzara. He's going to talk about some enrollment trend information here.
So you can see in these first charts here that we begin this process in February. February, we begin to get projections, and as you guys will all remember, because we've changed policies and ARs on this, we've moved timelines back to give us the ability in February to better predict what our enrollment will be. That helps us with staffing, that helps us to really monitor with student requests and really give programs the opportunity of what we need. And what that graph will kind of show you is there have been some ups and downs throughout the months, but we projected, there's a 15,976 total number, and we landed on 15,960. So kind of showing us that we think for us, we were able to hit these numbers pretty accurately. And it'll show later in the, how that translates into master schedule and to HR, that we've been pretty tight with our sections, exactly where we thought we were going to go. I want everyone to remember, and this is brought up in our budget reports, and the idea that, remember, while enrollment's a nice figure to have and we have to staff on it, we only get paid at who comes to school. So tying that back, of course, to our attendance, and we're presenting to you the next one, that's very important. So we're automatically underfunded in our staffing, and that's what that represents. And it's up to us, of course, to try to increase that ADA, but that's just the inherently, and that's just, you made comments earlier, Vice President Carl, about the legislative action and how they decide to fund California. Other states fund schools differently. California chooses to do it this way, and inherently they underfund us. So last year was the first year that we really had a fully centralized open enrollment and interdistrict process. So there are graphs and charts that follow, but overall, our offices processed over 3,000 applications. You'll see there we've got about 1,492 open enrollment applications. About 948 were placed exactly where they wanted to go. We worked through waiting lists. We had a whole process to go through waiting lists. We still had families that didn't get their first or second choice. Data on those folks, I think ultimately, I didn't put it in the charts, but ultimately we lost 87 families that wanted to come to us that did not get placed. 23 of those families were out of district to begin with, primarily at the elementary school level. So we had this question, and I recall getting these, questions from you all about what's this going to do with this new open enrollment process, and perhaps putting caps and creating waiting lists, which is the first time we've done that. Are we going to lose students? And the data shows us, not in these charts, but in other data we collected, we lost a total of about 87 families that were not able to come to us because of the caps. They chose not to attend any of our other schools that were available. The schools that they wanted to attend, Proctor, Hidden Valley, Maria Carrillo, Santa Rosa High School, were capped. And those families chose to go elsewhere. I'll show you here in a second the interdistricts that are exiting and entering. So in this first slide, and hopefully you had big enough you can look at it yourselves in more detail. The real information here for the first time is that our biggest exit of students is to West County District. primarily is the secondary district. So we had a total of 1,087 families, students that left our district to go to adjacent districts. And we broke down some of those largest numbers there. We received 457 families this last year, and you see those numbers of where they're coming from as well. We also, it was requested by board members to try to get information on why they're leaving. And the number one reason shows to be just a combination of siblings, they're attended there, it looked like they just have a long history. And what we found out is many of these families just had never been to a Santa Rosa City school for some of those reasons stated, like childcare, attending where their sibling was. It wasn't, as you can see in the data, it wasn't because of our specialized programs they're leaving and couldn't offer things. The primary reason was something to do with childcare, family had already been attending there, or some historic reason. The other detail we give you is our breakdown of inside the district called open enrollment. You see that scattered throughout there. So we had a total of 948 students that do not attend their school of residence. And you see where that comes from in detail. We also threw in the permits in the last column there, in the purple if you have color, which kind of shows, in addition to the open enrollment, these other schools where they went. We don't have the 93 students that came to Santa Rosa High School. We didn't break down exactly where they came from. We didn't have that level of data, but we know that Santa Rosa High School picked up 93 different additional students. So that's always been interesting data. We always wondered about that. There's our first year's data. We, of course, will use this as baseline, and we'll be digging into this again, because in 4 days, the next round of open enrollment begins. And so we'll start this process all over again.
So it was important to look at that information, and before we start talking about the next few slides, to understand that there's a couple of things that are important. One is that all the data on the slides, this slide and the next few slides, is static data. This was a snapshot that was started a couple weeks ago, because it takes a lot of time to kind of get all that information together and disaggregate it to have a picture of what's happening site by site, class by class. The other part of it is that you have to, though the data we're talking about is static, the process isn't static. I mean, so when we look and discuss about some of the changes we've made, it's important to know that we will be evaluating those and looking at how those have impacted staffing decisions at the site level, so that we can, when we move forward, if we need to make adjustments, we'll make adjustments. So the first one is 16-17 staffing. There was 275.2 FTE and 276.3 FTE in 17-18. At the elementary level, we talk about FTE, and that means full-time teachers or full-time employment. At the secondary level, included in sections also, because when you build a master schedule at the secondary level, you're talking about instructional sections. How many sections of English, how many sections of math, et cetera. And so in 16-17, there was 2,032.6, and this school year there was 1,099.2 sections. So again, current openings. We see that we've had some current openings, and some of these at the elementary level were created recently because of TOSA positions and other changes at the elementary staffing level. At the secondary level, and this was as of last Friday, I know that I've signed this week some successful candidate forms, so we're still in the process of onboarding people that will ultimately change these numbers. Unfortunately, we're talking about this on September 27th. Ideally, you want to staff and get as accurate as possible prior to that, but we also know that at the secondary level, we have a lot of these less than full-time positions. And when we look later in slides that talk about overages and core classes more than 33, oftentimes those are impacted by the fact that you can't find a .2 Spanish teacher, or you can't find right now, surprisingly, a .4 social studies teacher, which I'm a social studies guy. I remember that we were all over the place. And so those part-time openings are difficult to fill and create problems in your master schedule. And again, this is not a surprise to anybody, but special services, special education staff, not just classroom teachers, but specialists like nurses, psychologists, and SLPs are hard to find, and we're competing with surrounding districts. And there's just not enough being produced by institutions to meet the need across the state. So just as some information about elementary class size and the status of where we are as a district. So just to remind the board that K-3 grades need to be an average from kindergarten to third grade by site 24 or less. That's part of the LCFF funding formula, that we need to meet that requirement by site. It's not a district-wide requirement. Each site is averaged individually. And then fourth grade through sixth grade, the contractual class size is 32. Currently, right now, we have no overages at the elementary level, which wasn't the case last year. We had some blips, like at Brook Hill and other places, that were causing some larger than desired classes. And so right now, at the elementary level, we do have some additional FTE at the elementary level, and we're currently working to maximize that, meaning we're looking to where can we, if openings come up, mid-year retirements, are there some moves we can make to fill those positions internally without hiring additional folks from, and adding to our budget. Next slide, please. So this is kind of just, again, a middle school snapshot. And there's some exciting information here, and maybe I'm the only one that's excited about it, but we're looking at so it has Lawrence Cook, Herbert Slater, Comstock, et cetera there, and it talks about class size. And I want, because so much of our discussion last year when we went through the staffing and we looked at our budget community roundtables, was really looking at class size and also core class size. Those are math, English, science, and history. So we do have some core classes that are larger than 33. And also remember that at the secondary level, we have a class list or a class, it's not a class cap, but it's an overall student teacher load of 165, which is an average of 33 students. And again, that's not the ideal size. That's just what the contractual limit is that results in paid overages. But you can see here, we have some good class sizes. Cook and Comstock, and it could be impacted by our change in our open enrollment policies, and we'll dig into that further as we move through this year, are up enrollment, both of them. Cook drastically up in enrollment, which is exciting because, and it's not, it's students, Cook has a higher than normal, much higher than normal special ed student population. And the additional students coming in aren't necessarily all special ed students. And as we can build programs in that school and offer more things for all students, we can attract more students into that school. And it is, when you have a small school like Cook or Comstock, it's difficult to have multiple offerings in electives because you have such a small population that you have certain things you must do, and it limits what you can do. And it's an expensive endeavor for a district to run a middle school, comprehensive middle school of small size, but hopefully over time we'll be able to build those back up. So you can see where the overages are, and in our contract with our teachers, it is a $10 per day per student. And so I have conversations regularly with middle school principals about what really is best for kids and best for teachers. We've had teachers in the district pick up an additional section, teaching during their prep. That's always a nice solution to a difficult problem. If you have a science class that you have a 0.2 science, you need a 0.2 science class, you're not going to find a 0.2 teacher third period somewhere that's willing to pick that up. But really, that's hard on a teacher long term. It always is, says, oh no, I want to do that, but you get to February and that just wears them out. So it's always better to look at what can we do to get ahead of that. At the high school level, you know, the bigger system, the more complex it is. This is the same information, and this again was a snapshot of a couple weeks ago. Almost all of the high school VPs have created a shared Google Doc around their master schedule with me so that we can have ongoing conversations about overages. I know now that Elsie Allen actually has 5 overages. Montgomery now has 3, and Carrillo also has 2 more, so they're at 5. And those overages are coming when a student, if you have a biology class of 33, that 34 student becomes, science lab classes have caps of 33. So even if you're under the 165, you get that 34th student in the honors biology class, which is normal. I mean, it's not abnormal to have full honors classes. That's an additional overage that we pay as a district. And again, all of this information is used, and it's continually examined and discussed with myself, Mr. Mazira, and the high school VP so that we can start planning for what's next. I know this was something, especially in the spring, we were going through our budget reduction discussions. What would be the impact of tighter staffing on AP and IB classes? So we put this table together so you can see what's kind of a 13-14 to the present trend in AP courses and IB offerings. So again, I spoke to this a little bit earlier about how all of this, even though the snapshot was what I gave you as far as a moment in time, but really the process is fluid, and the movement of students in a schedule will change. You know, there'll be drastic changes at the secondary level semester, for example. All of that will impact those numbers that you saw in earlier slides. So really, we are working, and I feel like we're in a much better place now as a system than we were when I first came into this position, not for several reasons. One is we're really working to refine the system that we gather enrollment information. We have purchased last spring Decision Insight, which is a software company that coincidentally, I asked Rick, was this intentionally? Did Illuminate call them and tell them to call us? He says, no, it was dumb luck, which I'll take that when I can get it. A system that works with Illuminate to help us track enrollment data. And it's really quite an extensive program. And at some point, perhaps when Andre and I get the training we need, can do a demonstration for the board, because you can actually capture some pretty amazing demographic data in our city through this program. It's kind of Big Brotherish in some way, but it'll help us get a better picture of enrollment as we move forward. We also need to really continue to work at the site level to collect that student information as early as possible. Because when you're talking about staffing, especially when you're looking at CTE courses or specific AP courses or upper level language courses, you need to have that information as early as possible to ensure that you're doing what you need staffing wise to make sure you have the availability of teachers and courses for those kids. We also are really going to be spending some time as a district training our administrators and our cabinet and our district level folks at master schedule building. That really has never happened. As long as I've been doing master schedules, even though I was only doing middle schools, I had an administrator from Pioneer who's long retired came over and showed me on pencil and paper how to build a master schedule. And there's been some basic training, but we really need to look at systemic training on how to really do that the best we can. Also, really continue to build collaborative systems with our site administrators and their teacher leaders to really have conversations, transparent conversations around classes and course offerings and what their students need. And again, with the end result being student-driven master schedule building. And we still are seeing courses that, that are I'm going to say it, adult-driven. They're not attracting the students. And really the way you look at this is that those are the people we're serving, those are our clients, and we want to offer the things they're looking for. And there's always obstacles. There's always, can we find the right person to teach the course or the qualified person to teach the course? And so those are things, so the earlier we get that data, the more time we have to answer those questions and to overcome the obstacles that go with creating those programs. And it will also, earlier we collect the data, the earlier we can identify our staffing needs, and I kind of touched on that a little bit. So, is there any questions from the board?
Are there? Director Anderson.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad to hear about master schedule training because I felt like that we need the expertise that we don't have. And I know at least a couple of high school sites, we worked really hard to get students to identify what classes they intended to take come fall. And they did that and left school in the spring with a schedule that indicated they were going to have what they planned to do. And for many of these students, when they meet with the counselors in 8th grade, they map out, this is what I'm going to need to do to meet my college goals or be the student I want to be or learn everything I want to learn. And that includes, so then when you're in senior year, a lot of times that comes down to, I need to do AP Calculus, AP Physics, and maybe statistics or bio. And when we don't have expertise on the master schedule, then we wind up having, all 3 of those classes offered in one period. And they have to make a choice. And if they happen to also want their college application to look good by showing that they've been doing a consistent art for 4 years. And that's offered the same period too. So then they have to make that heartbreaking choice of where do I destroy this map I've been working hard on since 8th grade. And it's heartbreaking. And then they come back to school and find out that the classes that they thought they were going to be able to take aren't. By that time, they can't sign up with the JC. It's going to cost $2,000 to get the course online. It causes this whole rigmarole that adds to the whole stress of a senior who's needing to do their applications for college. So I'm wondering if there's more we can do to get the information, when we tell them in the spring that this is your course schedule in the fall, how can we increase our confidence that that's really going to happen? And could we be very clear with students and parents that this is the schedule you might have in the fall, but heads up, the odds of you getting that schedule may be, I don't know what the statistics are of students. And some of these students, I mean, a lot of times we're talking about the top 10, 20, 30 students in the graduating class, but they count too. And these are students who, are working to excellence, and I care a lot about them. So I'd like to know what we can do to support them to achieve their goal and be the person they want to be when they present themselves to colleges.
I do think that collecting information earlier will help with that. But we also have to understand, as I've mentioned multiple times during the presentation, that staffing, everything is fluid. I mean, sometimes things happen about teachers not being here or what. I mean, there's a lot of variables that impact the scenario that you described. But I do think training and looking at trying to get the information as early as possible to ensure that things are in place concretely when students exit in the spring. And I also think, and again, not to, and Rick can throw something at me from behind if I'm overstepping my boundary, but I think that as we continue to expand our use of our student information system, there's a possibility that those things can happen online, and there's some student portal action that can happen as course requests. And so the more we do to bring what we do into the 21st century, and the earlier we do that, the more we can be better assured that what we give students in the spring is really what happens for them in the fall.
And Director Anderson, also, I did master schedule 3 years of planner, and there was a very small declining enrollment, and it is very difficult when you have to do those. Consistency in the schedule, long term, so 4 years out, where is calculus going to be 4 years from now? Students can adopt to it because then they can take the JC class their junior year. So all that, getting back to Mr. Lee's point, training for them to build a master schedule. We entrust a lot. We don't micromanage those master schedules at the school site, and they address student needs, so it's important that those folks are very well trained about it and they know what they're doing. It also is very critical for our work with equity. What you have in your master schedule is what you are and what you believe, and so that master schedule has to reflect your equity, and all the other pieces we're talking about, it all comes into your master schedule at the secondary level.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that, and I do think that also equity comes into it when you wind up having families who there are those families who have the parents who can scramble and find some plan B for their child in the fall, and yet that means that there are families who can't. And so when I hear about people spending $2,000 for an online course because their course got dropped at high school, that is a problem, and it says to me, well, that means there are kids in the same situation who couldn't do that, and that is disturbing. So thank you for your work, and I look forward to it.
Dr. Fong.
Thank you. Thanks for this succinct report. One of the things that we dealt with some meetings back when we're talking about enrollment were the under-enrolled classes. So I'm also maybe wondering, where we are on those. And I know you know it in your head perfectly right now, but you can tell us some other time.
I can
That's
bring that
interesting to
information
me.
back, but we have drastically less under-enrolled in the courses than we did. And remember, most of those were in the elective courses. And so conversations started last year, and I apologize for not including that information, but at the site level about, and this is an ongoing conversation because I know we've had this discussion at the board level that it's not possible financially and logistically to do everything for everyone. And so the conversations began last year with site administration about identifying truly what is your identity. And Steve said this, and I heard this a long time ago as a principal, I can tell what you value by what's in your master schedule. And we have some great CTE programs, and we have some great facilities in our district that we really need to have a conversation about better utilizing, because we tend to want to do as much as we can for as many as we can, at the same time underutilizing some amazing things that are offered in our district. So those are ongoing conversations because, as Diane's mentioned earlier, that has to involve staff. We're going to do this from the middle so that we approach it collaboratively and do it the right way. But we do have less under-enrolled courses than we did last year, while at the same time being cognizant of having core courses that are too full and not accommodating students and teachers who are working hard in those courses.
And then, for example, in Montgomery High School, 24 core classes graded in 33. I'm wondering if that's like 5% of the core classes, or, you know, I don't know. So that would be interesting to me. Master scheduling is, without a doubt, the most complex thing, really. You know, it's tough. No one is ever pleased with the master schedule. I'm wondering again, if we go back to my kind of mantra about barriers, if we're trying to be, and we're not trying to be, but we try to be all things to all kids and provide all our students with what they need, how is the master schedule a barrier, there's that word again, to serving our students? So if the master schedule is 6 periods a day, or maybe we have 0 period, only 7 periods a day, and we're fitting everything, all 4 levels of French, plus the honors, and all, you know, whatever levels of art we have, and everything that we want to take and we want to offer to kids, and they all like different things, and we want to engage them, we want all those things. How does the 6 period day serve us, is the question I will leave with you. I have an opinion, but I won't say that right now.
I'm assuming that was a rhetorical question because I don't have the answer right now. So.
I think it's something that Director Fong is asking me to explore, and that we will explore it, and we will bring back some of our thoughts and ideas around what would a school look like if it had no bells or no periods? What would a school look like if it was on a 45-15 day, which would also then take into consideration less gaps in educational time? You know, what would the dream school that we had at one point around CTE look like? How do our existing schools, how could we look at our existing schools and think about different configurations and different ways in which we utilize existing space to provide different kinds of opportunities? We are definitely conjuring ideas around these things. Where we have definite think tank going on. So now that you brought it up, Director Fong, we will bring those ideas forward and let the board have some discussion around it and see what direction they'd like us to go.
Dr. Christoph.
Steve and Jason, thank you very much for your presentation. I can't stress again how important data is, you know, real, and getting better at, you know, producing data. I want to go down your slides just real quickly. I just had a couple of comments and questions. The enrollment versus average daily attendance, I think most people are in this room are pretty aware of that concept, and I think I think we're closing that gap a little bit, but when I look at it, I'm still struck, you know, 1,000 different, you know, many states and countries don't fund school systems like this. But that equates to, say, roughly $10,000 a student. That's $10 million right there that we're losing in attendance. And that's a number that I think is very important to keep in our minds as a board and as a district as we move along, because that's, you know, money is very dear to us, as you know. And then going down to the outflow slide, and I appreciate the breakdown in terms of where, you know, people are going. We had a number that the first few years on the board that was of concern to me, and that was what was the net outflow, and it's been about 2,000 in the past, and I'm extrapolating now, saying that if we have 1,086 going out for 57 coming in, and this is 1 year, I could multiply that by 5, and it's still about 2,000. Is that correct? If you put them all the classes together.
Yes, that would work.
So that would be $20 million right there that we're losing from outflow. And I'm just going. This is a very revealing slide, and you know, the reasons sometimes for people going are not always clear or honest, but it's something to think about. And I think it's a huge problem that we have in public schools, the way we do business. And I wouldn't fault anybody for it, but I'm looking at what that means to our budget, and that's a lot of money. On your end of your summary, district open enrollment, I appreciate that very much. That's something I want to study and take a look at a little bit more. And then when we get down to, let's just go down to middle high school course enrollment. I just had a couple of questions here. I don't know exactly what this slide means, or these slides. So Santa Rosa High School, for example, 3 core classes, 25. Can you explain again to me what that means?
So 3 core classes, meaning math, science, English, or social science classes that have above 33 kids in a class. So it means 3 individual classes have 34 or to 36 or even 37. So the average class size means all of their classes offered at Santa Rosa High School, you know, that's their average enrollment is 25. 0 means at this point, and again, this is a snapshot of last week. It could have changed, it could be different, but at that point in time, no teachers were receiving payment for overages, meaning they were all either science classes 33 or below, and teachers 165 or less on their rosters.
Okay, when you figure the number average class size, so you're taking 5 periods, right?
Yeah. Excuse me, I'm
You're
sorry.
using 5 period to divide
Yeah,
this?
if you look at, I provided in the supporting documents by site, and so essentially what was not included are, so if I'm teaching 5 periods of social studies, if I was teaching 5 periods of world history like I used to, I would take the total enrollment in each of those classes, add it up, and divide it by 5.
Okay, so these are divided by 5.
Yeah.
So the average class size is 25. Huh, because the classes I've visited, social science at Santa Rosa High School, seem to be quite large.
Well, remember, that's not just social science, that's all their classes. Every class they offered at the high school. It also includes PE classes, which can be much larger. They also have a very large music class. They have a lot of classes.
Okay, so that would imply if it's 25, that you've got some pretty small classes.
You got some
too.
small classes, you got some big classes.
Okay, I just have to go back and look at the numbers, you know. Yeah, thank you very much. And again, I appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One thing that I'd like to see in maybe a month or so is a comparison of the overages paid in the first, say, 2.5, 3 months this year and last year. It'd be interesting to see if there's any difference on that. But as Director Kristoff indicated, keep bringing the data. It's very helpful in analyzing. And there's a lot of raw data, obviously, behind this. So board members are certainly encouraged to ask anything that they want to take a look at the district office. We're certainly better able to provide it. Thank you. We'll move on to our last discussion item, which is F7. This is the student attendance and information update on Project SAIL.
As Ms. Turner comes down, I'm going to jump ahead. We start with a video reminder of our importance with attendance, and we're going to show you quickly here Superintendent Kudermer's recent publication on attendance.
2,340 days. Sounds like a lot, right? I'm Diane Kitamura, Superintendent of Santa Rosa City Schools. Here in school, those days go by fast.
Which of your fingers did it bite? Those
Yeah, so a lot of good posts there. I love your like. Let's see.
Two questions. So the paper
One of the most important things you can do to help your child succeed is to get them to school on time every day. Learning today requires groups of students working together. When you miss a day, even for an excused absence, you miss a lot. Let's work together to make sure every student is in school every day. School every day counts.
Vice President Carl, board members, and Superintendent Kitamura, to item F7 we're going to bring you is our update on attendance. It fits very nicely with your previous resolution. Thank you for approving September, the Attendance Awareness Month. And with that, we're going to give you both a shot of some of our data. So we're bringing you end of the year data. We're wrapping it into what we're working on in our project sale. And I'll introduce to you one of the new hats that Director Turner now wears. She's graciously come over from C&I. She still has a foot in C&I for now. And is working on, she's going to be the administrator of the project sale attendance grant. You see that there. You remember Ms. Turner worked with us on the Elevate Academy, so she's wrapping that and tying that together. And with that, no further ado, I'll turn it over to Ms. Turner.
Thank you and good evening. Thank you and good evening. We're happy and pleased that we were able to use the wonderful video of our superintendent in our back-to-school nights. And I have a couple tables for you. With the wonderful award that we've been given with the Learning Communities for School Success Program from the state, although this grant is only funded for 3 years, we will work diligently to make sure that structures and systems that we implement will not only improve our student attendance, but will become effective ways to resolve attendance issues at our sites. The table you see now is the actual data from 16-17, last year's elementary truancy totals for all of our sites in the elementary level, K-6. Actually, some of them, the charters go K-8. And then the next table you have is the secondary level. Now, although you see truancy 1 and truancy 2 letters, the numbers for this grant, it's not something that we're going to say, how can we beat it? Because a lot of our programs will want to see them as well reduced. So it's not like we're going to look at these numbers just for comparison of growing or decreasing. It's just what we have now. What will these tables tell us as we bring the grant together with our services will be a different story. And we want to elaborate more as far as the case management and the work that we do with our families. Not just numbers, but we did want to present these tables to you. This wonderful color of chart is new. We wanted to match the colors of our academic presentation, how the state level dashboard, thank you, presents their scores, the CASP, and the levels of our students academically. So in matching those same colors, we have superimposed the days missed as 0 and 4 and excellent, 5 and 9 satisfactory. We look at the yellow as caution, warning at 14 to 17, and then the chronic, which is our 10% or more, the 18 days missed during the whole school year. These days count everything, excused, unexcused, everything. A letter is now being printed as we speak for 14,300 families. And we have taken last year's data, in the next slide you'll see that, and identified how many days missed they had last year, and want them to somewhat look at their, not just their number, but look at this chart and where they've landed. We could celebrate those wonderful families that had the blue and the green, satisfactory and excellent, or we can say, let's look to see how we can move toward the blue and green for this next year. So this is somewhat of a motivation as well. This is our data of, again, our actual numbers, and it is district grade levels. As you can see, the very first column is all total, and then the KA, K, all the way to 11th grade from last year. Using that data is what we placed on this letter that they will receive this next couple of weeks. Okay? Again, we have a pyramid, very typical as far as RTI and all of the programs that we offer with BEST and restorative. But in this case, this is attendance. We identified the same colors and placed them in this level of degree from the bottom blue all the way to the red with DA referrals. These are just some of the things that we have in place, but I see with our new grant, these areas growing. We're going to be creative. We're going to include not only what we're putting out this next couple of weeks with a positive letter indicating their missed days, but we're going to have people hired to be more involved with our families, to have case management, so that we can eliminate those numbers of students growing with attendance issues that need to be, or that go to the road of DA referrals. We want to decrease them. What do we have on our sidelines? Well, we do have Elevate Academy. It is one option where they can start to begin to erase some of those absences, decrease the totals. And then again, on the other side, we are showing our case management with the specialists that we will be hiring and with the program that we now have in place with Steel Lane, Biela, and Comstock, and that is the Keeping Kids in Schools. And these individuals, I am so impressed. I've been in this position for just a couple months, and the emails and the detail of how dedicated they are in making sure that our students are coming to school is incredible. So if we can even match that, we're going to be winners. I am thrilled at the results. Can I do a dance? We offered 9 sessions. We just said, hey, let's just check it out once a month. And the results are tremendous. 16 schools participated. You have the breakdown there in the parentheses. 75 teachers participated. 1,888 students were recovered. But what tops them all is that we had our doors open and served 2,267 students on those Saturdays. I can't say that. Huge. Congrats to everyone who participated. What are our expectations with the project? Well, we want to reduce those big numbers of chronic absenteeism totals. We want to promote that every day does count and on time. We want to plan to assist our sites with their truancy process and closely serve our families with their needs, using our support staff and, of course, our nurse, newly hired Elizabeth Munns. We want to ignite further our student learning by growing the Elevate Academy program to 21 sessions this year. That's just about every Saturday, except for the ones that piggyback a vacation week or a holiday Monday. So that is 21. We want to motivate our students with numerous absences and have them participate in these wonderful learning opportunities. Next steps for Project SAIL. Again, that is student attendance improves learning. What a great name. I like my boats too. We are excited about our first quarterly meeting with our new 9-member Project SAIL Advisory Board. It is coming this next month. The committee is comprised of representatives from the following organizations. They will play an important role to help monitor the project progress and obtain formative feedback from them on program improvement ideas. We will recruit soon our 3 attendance specialists coming from the CSEA. We will develop metrics and team expectations with this group and develop support systems for the sites, as every day does matter. Any questions?
Board member questions, comments? Director Anderson, you don't have to be shy.
I'm sorry, you keep hitting things that I care about. So I thank you. I'd love to see, I wish you every success in what you're doing. And it just seems in connection with the Attendance Awareness Month that could we put out a press release and maybe get some information out about certainly everything you're doing and the Attendance Awareness Month, but also go back to what somebody brought up, I think when Rod was asking questions, that we're losing, was it $1 million a year? $10 million a year. Okay, that would get, I think, a lot of parents' attention. That, right now we're all very sensitive to the fact that we don't have enough money. And I think to get the public involved in a very practical matter that this is what is costing us as a community would be super helpful.
Most definitely, I agree.
Student board member, Luke?
Yeah, I actually had this issue brought to my attention by my wonderful AP Stats teacher, Miss Brady Long. Today, she informed me that this was on the agenda, so I looked into it. And she brought up, and we talked about it a little in class, that Carrillo doesn't have nearly the same attendance problem as some of the other schools. And I talked with some of my fellow peers in the class about why we think that is, and we kind of came to the consensus that at Carrillo, missing a day of school for whatever reason, it's seriously hard to make up. Like the workload that is expected to be turned in when you return from absence. And I'm not sure if that's the right solution to the problem, but I think it would be worth looking into why Carrillo's number is so different from the other high schools, because there's probably multiple factors playing into that.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the informational report. Patty, it's very clear that you're excited about it, and you have good reason to be.
I just like to dance.
And you can dance all you would like.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to adjourn in a second, but I would like the minutes to reflect that the adjournment of this meeting was in honor of Wally Lowry, who recently passed away. A small slice of Wally's phenomenal impact in Sonoma County and on a wider level was the fact that he sat on this board. And he actually was an SSU professor of many staff members, some of whom even made reports to this board, and Wally was fond of talking about them. He was a wonderful gentleman, a pleasure to work with, a guy who was a lifelong learner in the truest sense of the word, and we appreciate everything he has done, and our condolences go out to Ellie and the rest of the family. So if the the minutes could reflect that we adjourned in his honor, we'd appreciate it. And that'll do it. We're done.